I know from experience and having talked to lots of venture capitalists that the word content is just a horrible concept to venture capitalists now, and yet you have actually built your portfolio around this. So what's different? What are you seeing that others are missing?
You know, I think what's happened is that the West Coast venture capital community for the longest time didn't like content because it takes too many people who make too much money to produce the content. And there's a bias, I think, in the West Coast in particular, to machines creating things. And sure enough, you know, Google came along and was this incredible machine that created great advertising inventory with essentially no human intervention. And as we know, Google's a great company and went on to be a great story. And everybody's been chasing the next machine that can create great advertising inventory. But the fact is that I think it's an anomaly. And that to create great advertising inventory, you need to create great content. And creating great content means great people who you do have to pay, who know how to write and edit and design and build, you know, interactivity into the content. And so we've always believed that. And that's the type of content that I think people want to consume. I think that's the type of content that advertisers want to be associated with. And because the notion of having too many people around, I think that's what's driven venture guys away from content as a business.
And two of the areas that some venture capitalists are excited about that are still under the rubric content but are very different than what you're doing, and I want to get to what you're doing in a minute, are the completely free user-generated content model, like Wikipedia, so there's a private version of that and so forth. Then there's the MIC content, the demand media associated content seed, where we're just going to pay 1 million freelancers $5 a post or whatever it is to create this massive body of work that will be SEO'd through Google and will make gazillions of dollars at the expense of the New York Times.
Right.
So do you think those models work?
Well, I think demand, you know, demand is basically a Google arbitrage. You know, they create a lot of content and it gets SEO'd, and then 90% of the revenue comes from the links, the Google links that are on the demand content. So having one revenue source is, you know, for 90% of your revenue is risky. But I think that that's a part of the equation. You know, I think that having that MIC content, to use your term, is important. You know, having, but I think you have to layer on top of it professional, branded content that the advertising community wants to be associated with. Because the risk, right, from a brand's perspective is that it gets involved with some of this user-generated or MIC content, and it's hard to know what's going to be created next. You know, it's not a safe place for a brand manager or a media planner to associate a brand with.
And so you think advertisers will continue to care about that? Because if you go to a trade show now, you'll have 27 ad networks tell you, doesn't matter. Demand media will tell you, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I do. Look, I think remnant inventory is always going to be best monetized through ad networks. But the fact of the matter is that the majority of the margin of advertising-based businesses is going to be through sold inventory to advertisers. And when my companies, you know, talk to advertisers or agencies, the media planners go onto the site and they say, I want to be on that page and that page and that page. They point to the pages that they want to be on. They care about context. They care. Brands take a long time to build, and they're very easy things to destroy. And so they don't want to take that chance. And so I do think that this that professional and curated content is really important. And I think having the other stuff beneath it is great. And I think you can make a lot of money on remnant inventory. You know, the margins aren't great, but I think you can do pretty well with it. But without the branded top level, I think it's hard to create real sustainable businesses.
Now, at Village Ventures, you've developed a very clear thesis with a lot of very key points to it. It's not just invest in any content business. So talk about that.
Yeah, you know, we have learned over the last 6 or 7 years that there are basically 3 pieces to this content business, vertical content business, that really makes sense. The first thing is you really need to have an owned and operated, you know, branded content hub. You know, in parenting we have Babbel.com. In technology we have top10reviews.com. That's a really important thing to have. You know, a single URL that's attracting organic traffic, that's professionally produced. And then the second thing is some sort of direct-to-consumer revenue stream, whether it's subscriptions or e-commerce. Those two things really work well together to drive the overall business, because the direct-to-consumer piece allows you to do ROI-focused customer acquisition to bring people into your world, and then you can move them over, usually using email newsletters, to the owned and operated content where you can make more margin. And then the third piece is adding an ad network layer on top of that, because you can't, it's hard to get a single URL past 10 or 20 million uniques. If you want to get to 30, 40, 50 million uniques in a vertical, you really need to add other smaller content sites that you can represent and leverage your ad sales relationships.
And the one piece of that that's, I think, very important, a lot of content companies over the last 15 years have made the mistake of thinking, well, we'll start a URL, we'll buy advertisements on TV, people will see those and go. And what you're saying is you actually have to be marketing a very specific service. You're going to do that with keywords or something else. Folks are going to come in, maybe they're going to buy it, but maybe not. But if they don't, voila, there's your content sitting there, so you can have them look at that.
The capital efficiency of growing these vertical content businesses has gotten so much better, and it's exactly for that reason. You come up with something that people are willing to pay for. You go out and you bring, 30 people into that product. One of them buys it, the other 29 people don't. The one that does buy it pays for all 30, and then the other 29 people you recirculate into different content products you might have, where you can sell advertising to that audience and make a great margin. So those two pieces they really yin and yang well. The other thing is that when the advertising market is very cyclical, when it goes down on the direct-to-consumer piece, you're an ad buyer, right? Because you're buying advertising to bring people in. When the advertising market goes up, on the owned and operated media side, you're an ad seller. So you can grow through cycles by matching up those revenue streams. And then of course the ad network piece just adds a lot of scale, and then adds a lot of data, allowing more targeting. And the bigger your ad network, the more data you have, the more targeting you can do on the advertising.